information, and then we'll have time for a question and answer session at the very end. And I've also incorporated, I don't know if anyone's familiar with a Mentimeter, so you can ask anonymous questions from the crowd. We won't actually bring a microphone to you, which relieves my anxiety, that's for sure. So thank you so much. And housekeeping real quick, we have some restrooms that if you go outside of the auditorium, they're just straight across and to the left if you need to use the restroom. Also, as a reminder, there is no food or drink in the auditorium allowed except for water. Water's cool. So please feel free to stay hydrated with water. And then we'll get started. Our first panelist is Kevin Hutchins. Perfect. Oh, and I left my glasses in the back. Do you want to So Kevin began his career in law enforcement in 1988, so he's been doing this a really long time. He started with the Caldwell Police Department, had a career with the Idaho State Police, a patrol lieutenant in Boise, headquarters operations major in Idaho State Police as well, which is awesome. And in 2014, Kevin and his team were responsible for bringing the Oregon high-intensity drug trafficking area program to Idaho by writing and submitting a proposal that resulted in designation for Ada and Canyon counties. Idaho is now part of the Oregon-Idaho high-intensity drug trafficking area program, which has grown to include Bannock and Canyon counties. In April 2021, after more than 33 years in law enforcement, Kevin retired from Idaho State Police and in May began a new career with the Oregon-Idaho high-intensity drug trafficking area overdose response strategy as the Idaho Program Coordinator and Idaho Drug Intelligence Officer. Kevin has proudly called Idaho home for the past 55 years. He graduated from Caldwell High School, attended Idaho State University where he played football and was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. That's so cool. Kevin and his wife Cheryl are proud members of the Idaho State University football alumni team and proud Bengal boosters. Kevin has a Bachelor of Arts degree and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy class. Awesome. So let's welcome to the stage, Kevin.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. First of all, we were provided some questions that before the event, and the first question is, what steps are law enforcement agencies taking to combat the distribution of fentanyl in Idaho? And I think we're fortunate here in Idaho in that we have great cooperation among our local agencies and agencies statewide. We use a multi-agency task force which brings in officers from various agencies to help combat the distribution of fentanyl here in Idaho. One of the things I'm most proud of is communication between agencies. And typically that's done through our intelligence centers that either agencies have, the federal agencies have throughout the state, and we communicate very effectively through that. And probably one of the most important things we use is technology. As everybody in here knows, technology has come a long way, and we're able to use that technology to help us, whether it's locate people, locate vehicles, use the internet, whatever that looks like. So we're very fortunate in that aspect. And the next question is, how do current laws address the fentanyl crisis? And do I believe that legislative changes are needed? I think Idaho does a pretty good job of addressing, well, whether it's fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, any of the Schedule I drugs that we have here in Idaho. So I think, yes, we do a good job, and do I believe that legislative changes are needed? Yes and no. Sometimes they're needed, sometimes the law is written and we start enforcing it and we realize that that's not a regular law. But I think we do a pretty good job here in Idaho addressing that through the laws, the current laws that we have. How are local and federal agencies working together to combat fentanyl trafficking? I think that Idaho is fortunate in that we, local, state agencies get along very well with our federal partners, which we're fortunate here because I've heard stories from other states where nobody gets along. I think we're still small enough, relatively speaking, that local officers know each other. I know when I was working, I knew most of the federal officers working here in Idaho, and most of the local agencies working here in Idaho. So, are there emerging drug boosters that pose new risk to users? One of the things that you may have seen on the news is the presence of xylazine. And if you don't know what xylazine is, xylazine is a tranquilizer, a pain reliever, and a central nervous system depressant used in veterinary clinics. And you may have seen news articles. The East Coast is getting hit very hard with xylazine. We've seen it here in Idaho on a few occasions, but it's not prevalent here, so we're fortunate that that's the case. Polysubstance use is when two or more drugs are used or taken together. We see a little bit of that here. I get reports from our state lab that they see it. I'm not going to say frequently, occasionally, so luckily we're not having to deal with that here in Idaho. So those are probably the two emerging things that I see on a daily, or not on a daily basis, but frequently from other states. How is fentanyl being smuggled into communities, and what methods are traffickers using to evade detection? Any way you can imagine, that stuff is coming into Idaho. I was at the San Ysidro port of entry a couple of years ago, and they had just seized several hundred pounds of cocaine that was hidden in avocados. So you can imagine, let your mind run wild, and you're probably still not even close to the ways that stuff is getting into the United States. What role does international drug trafficking play in the fentanyl epidemic? Fentanyl production and distribution is controlled by the Mexican drug cartels. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's a business, and it's run like a business. And if you don't believe me, that's why they're making so much money, because it is a business for them. And the last question is, what can communities do to support law enforcement efforts on addressing the fentanyl epidemic? And I think the most important thing that our communities can do is become involved. Become involved in whether it's events like this or, when something happens in the community, speak up. Let your local policymakers know, and let your state policymakers know that this isn't accepted in our community. And because they like hearing from people. And I spent the latter part of my career dealing with our legislature. And when it comes from citizens, their ears perk up because you guys vote. And you can vote them out. I mean, it's that simple. But becoming involved, I think, is the most important thing that we can do as citizens, and let our policymakers know what is happening in our communities. So,
And that was a spoiler alert. Those were for the end, but thank you so much for answering. Wow, that was very helpful. Do you want to? This one right here.
sorry.
No, it's great. I love it.
This is the first time I've done this, so I.
No, I love it. Technology is my favorite.
Well, I was just saying that I'm refusing. I'm just going to show this is the Oregon, Idaho, HIDA designated areas. And in order to achieve designation, it's run through the Office of National Drug Control Policy certification process. And they deem whether the area is significant, has a significant problem with trafficking. So you see the areas in blue in Oregon and the areas in Idaho. That's just we have 10 border crossings along the southwest border, and just to give you an idea of what that looks like. The drug flow from Mexico, whether it's fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin, or cocaine, you see the routes that typically are taken in major cities. From those major cities into the Oregon, Idaho area throughout the state. And then proceeds from that. That was all of this stuff.
That's awesome, that was great. I'm so sorry about the clicker. And that's, yes, exactly. So questions are for the end, and thank you so much for answering all of those. It's really helpful. Nate, could you advance the slides, please? To panelist number 2. I don't know if I'm doing so fun. Just gotta be flexible here. Some great slides though, and thank you so much for being here. This is a great 30,000-foot view, and so we're going to go from a big overview to the person, which is really great. And I love that because every overdose, every death was a person, a brother, a sister, a mom, and I think it's really important. Nate, is it working back there? This clicker is not right. Great slides there. Okay. There we go. Okay. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, everyone. This is so fun. Thank you. Okay, for our next speaker, we have Chief Deputy Coroner Takasha Love, who has been with the Coroner's Office for 5 years and oversees the field training, internships, and community awareness programs. She has a bachelor's in health science and received her death investigation certification from the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners in 2022. Before becoming a coroner, she worked in a multitude of clinical medical roles and specialties throughout the Treasure Valley. Let's call her Tasha. So we're covering everybody
everybody that has died from overdoses in Canyon County. So all of those statistics you're going to see, that is within the jurisdiction that pertains to me, essentially. So who are the people that are primarily affected in our area? What is the age group? It's 19 to 76. That's what we're seeing that are actually dying from these overdoses in our area. And this timeline, I'm talking back over the last 5 years when it became more prevalent in our area. It really hit us in about 2022 when we really started seeing a lot of fentanyl deaths. That's our general age range, all the way up to 76. Users have usually gone through some sort of rehabilitative service, and that can either be like drug rehab, medical or surgical rehabilitation, or they just came out of incarceration, and then they suddenly have access again. So think of people that broke their leg, and then the doctors prescribe them opioids to treat the pain, they get hooked on it, and then when they get out, the doctor cuts them off. What are they gonna do? They go to the streets, even if they have no history of drug use in the past. Those are the people that we see frequently. People that have drug history, they're incarcerated for it, they go to jail, they're in lockup for like 30 days. They get clean, they get sober, and then when they get out and they go back to the street and they try to use the same dose that they were using before. They think that they can hit a full pill at one time, thinking they have the same tolerance, but really that 30 days wiped out their tolerance, so their same amount is going to be fatal at that point. We have a lot of users who think they're purchasing another substance. We've had that happen quite a bit lately. They think they're buying cocaine, or they think they're buying some sort of white substance that they can smoke or snort. It turns out being fentanyl, they had no idea. That's what we've been seeing quite a bit lately. Where are we seeing this most? So this little snippet right here is from this really amazing program called ODMAP, which we use to track fatal overdoses and any suspected overdoses. We have EMS is inputting suspected, and then I will go in and log any that were fatal, what substances were in their system, and which ones were accounted as an overdose. So you see that little map of where the fatalities primarily go. That's our little belt where we're seeing them the most. So primarily through Nampa and Caldwell areas, and more downtown areas. In Nampa, there was, since 2023, about 22 fatal overdoses. The Sheriff's Office handled 6 of those, Nampa PD 16. So these are all broken apart by agencies that respond. Obviously, the Sheriff's Office is all the way through the county. They're going to be responding to all the cities. But Nampa, Caldwell, and then Middleton did take some of the brunt from fentanyl that's coming. Trends that we're seeing. So the dark pink number, that's out of our total overdoses that we've been having throughout the year. This can be any substance that reaches fatal toxicity levels. The light pink one is how many of those, all of those overdoses were actually fentanyl related. So you see how we hit that spike in 2022. Down here you see 2024, our totals are incomplete. It's actually projected to be 45% of our overdoses last year. We're still waiting for our pathologist, our autopsy results, because this is where it gets hung up. Do we know definitively if this was an actual drug overdose? That's where it comes down to toxicology in correlation with the autopsy report. And it can take up to months for us to have all of those slides completed. Everything in the final report to be like, yes, this is for certain an overdose. You can track it statistically as such. So for 2024, we still have 7 pending. For this year, we have 11 pending. We're projected to have about 67% anticipated fentanyl overdoses for this year already. Previous trends that we saw over the last few years, as he had mentioned earlier, xylazine was starting to be incorporated into the fentanyl that we were seeing here. It's that non-opioid tranquilizer commonly found in veterinary clinics. It was being mixed with the fentanyl. It makes it far more potent, and it extends how long the fentanyl side effects last. Now, from frequent using of it, it causes really horrible ulcers throughout the body that can actually anesthetize or die, turn to gangrene, essentially. So when we have a fentanyl death, we'd actually see them covered in like black blisters if they were using, if it was laced with xylazine. 4-ANPP is a contaminant, or think of it as like a dirty substance that is in illicit fentanyl. So people that are using clandestine labs, they're not able to purify their fentanyl to hospital grade, pharmaceutical grade. They can't get it down enough. So we have this derivative that's going to show up on our toxicology report that tells us that that was a dirty batch. It came from not a pharmaceutical lab. Parafluorofentanyl is a strain. That's a way to think of it. So it's an analog. All these analogs I'm going to mention are actual strains of fentanyl that we're seeing. It's even more potent than fentanyl and most of its other analogs. That one is extremely deadly. We were warned that that was coming to our area early last year. It started in the East Coast. It started to make its way here. Acetylfentanyl, another strain. It was actually, we were warned it was coming to our area in eyedroppers and blotters, and people were actually licking them on like little acid tabs. So our current trends, we haven't had any xylazine cases since early last year, and it was only one. So we kind of saw our wave of that come through. We haven't had any parafluorofentanyl since early 2024 either. Norfentanyl analog is in almost all of our cases now. That's the primary analog that we're seeing. Still no acetylfentanyl has made it to our area yet. From what we understand, as it is formed in like eyedroppers and blotters, it likely takes more time to process and get out on the street. 4-ANPP is in almost all of our cases too. So we're seeing that match with that norfentanyl. All of the strains that we're seeing in our toxicology reports almost look identical right now. Most notable trend for 2025 is a fentanyl methamphetamine combo. 80% of our overdoses have all had those, and it looks as it'll say fentanyl, norfentanyl, 4-ANPP, and methamphetamine. And we had a huge uptick of those from early March to mid-April. We just had a huge surge. They were all exactly the same derivative in the toxicology report, so that's one trend that we're trying to keep an eye on right now. So what are we doing? Our death investigation procedures, we're training with all law enforcement agencies, fire, EMS, so that way when we're doing these investigations, we're cohesive, it's effective, and we are now treating these as a homicide case because in Idaho you can now prosecute, as of July last year, the dealers. If you have enough evidence and you can trace it back, it is technically a homicide because someone gave them knowingly a drug that he put in. Partnerships with ISP, so Idaho State Police, for quick qualitative results. This helps us, so we're going to draw toxicology on scene prior to the autopsy. The Idaho State Police has a new device that we are helping them calibrate that actually can tell us what drugs are in their system within 24 hours. It won't give us the exact number, but it'll tell us, like, okay, what direction are we going in? It'll help law enforcement with who are they going to send out to the autopsy and how to move forward with the next steps. But we always send a quantitative to our specialty labs. We need to know if it's actually a fatal dose, a toxic dose, or if it was just a therapeutic dose. Our partnership with ODMAP, which is an online real-time map of suspected overdoses. I believe we're going to talk about that more here later. But that's that little map that I showed you. That was the snippet of all the overdoses that my office has inputted over the last few years. And then fentanyl awareness presentations. We go out to schools, we go out to just community events to kind of spread the word and tell them, like, hey, this is what we're looking at, especially in schools. I teach in Forensics 101 or Intro to Reporting. And at the end of it, when we do these fentanyl awareness speeches, we come to learn that at least 3 kids in every grade level has overdosed multiple times on fentanyl, and it's kind of it's a huge thing. So that's how we're reaching out to the community. That is it from me.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, that is a lot of information. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful. All right, panelist number 3, Division Chief Tom Wright has 36 years as a career paramedic in public and private transport with both ground and flight experience, serving the last 21 years with Nampa Fire Department. He is currently EMS Chief of the Nampa Fire Protection District. Let's welcome Tom.
I have to walk out front too,
Yes.
and I feel unprepared because I didn't print the questions.
Oh.
Being a knuckle dragging fireman, we're better under pressure, so we're gonna just wing it. Okay, so thank you, I appreciate, Melanie's awesome, everybody here has been amazing, and thank you guys for having me. So I'm basically gonna set the stage for Jacob, who's our next guy, because he's truly the magic in our plan. But I just wanted to share what we're doing at Napa Fire and hit a couple quick things. Ooh, there you go. So in 21, I had a bunch of crews come to me. We identified, I won't get into all the details, but we had a 17-year-old that got into the wrong crowd, overdose. The crew went out on him, and he was in cardiac arrest. His dad was doing CPR. They were able to get Narcan. They got him back. He was awake and talking as they loaded him in the ambulance, which is amazing. It's not something that happens a lot. We just got our CARES data the other day, and we're at about 40% out of hospital survival rates. So our goal is to try to get that a little higher, but that's a plug for a different topic. But and a lot of these, our guys are usually used to the heartbreaking, that these people don't make it. And so when this kid made it, they were just elated. Kid went to the hospital, got discharged back to home, got handed a sheet of paper to say, here's all the people that can help you, and ended up overdosing again. Crew went back out. Dad was doing CPR. This time they worked the kid for 35 minutes and weren't able to get him back. So they were crushed. And they came to my office and were like, we have to do something about this. We were having a ton of overdoses, and they're like, we hear about this Narcan Leave Behind program. Let's do something to help. So at that point, I started looking into the program, see if we can get it built. As we were building that, I got introduced to Jacob, and we built a way different program than anybody else in the state. So currently I believe that I know of, there's 11 fire departments in the state that are doing a Narcan Leave Behind program. We're the only one that has a peer support component attached to that, and actually getting people into treatment at home. Yes. So, which is huge. So, with that, I just want to talk a minute about Narcan, because the last time I was here, they were like, what is Narcan? And I kind of assume everybody already understands. So it's an opiate antagonist. What that basically means, to do chemistry at a pretty simple level, is you have these receptor sites in your body that take opiates, right? The fentanyl, the morphine, and it fills these sites and you get that effect. If you're in pain, it gives you the pain relief effect that you want. If you become addicted to it, you can end up stopping breathing, you become unresponsive, you're not with it, not doing good, and it leads to death, right? So Narcan, what it does is it goes in and binds these receptor cells, which means it fits into these spots and will not let the opiates get in and do their job. Problem with it is, the Narcan only lasts about 30 minutes on a half-life. And morphine is 50 minutes. Fentanyl, it depends on the volume you're taking and what it's mixed with and some other stuff, but you're looking at anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes for that. So if we give Narcan, and my big takeaway for this for you guys, if you happen to give Narcan, we really encourage that person to get treated and transported to the hospital, because there's a good chance in 30 minutes that wears off, that narcotics are still in their body. The effects are now going to take back over. So. The only thing Narcan will do is reverse narcotic overdoses. It doesn't hurt you. It has almost zero side effects. I will warn you, if you give this 4 milligram dose up here, the nasal one that we hand out, they're probably going to vomit on you, projectile. It's really kind of amazing. But the IV dose is what our guys give, and we call it titrated. We give it at really slow doses, basically to keep them breathing, and we don't take them completely out of that high. And it allows them to wake up without a horrible experience. It also results in us not having to fight with them, or our law enforcement partners not fighting with them. So we kind of prefer that. But if you don't have that and use the nasal, just expect they're probably going to throw up. They may be a little out of it and confused when they come on. Okay? Whoa. Okay, so some of the data that we've got, this is from 22 going out to this current year. And I wanted to explain this a little bit because there is a little bit of confusion on this, because unlike the coroner's office, who has the ability to say it's definitely narcotics, our guys don't know. We don't get the whole story. We get parts of story. That story changes as time goes on. And as they talk to other people, other professionals, the story evolves and changes. So our guys are pretty uncomfortable marking that it's an opiate overdose unless they really know. Like they saw the opiate, the person like admitted to it, or they gave Narcan and they woke up. Pretty good indication that's an opiate. So you can see where our numbers are starting to decline over the years, even though we still have some overdoses. Our guys our top number is overdoses total. That opiate line is the narcotic. It's either morphine or fentanyl. One of the things that happens with a lot of our people that we don't know is an overdose, but maybe they're a polypharm, meaning they have alcohol on board, maybe some other drugs, or some other stuff going on. Our guys will mark them as altered mental status, and that's AMS. They don't get in trouble that way. They don't feel like they're ratting them out, but they're truly confused. So when I look at these numbers and try to break out exactly where our narcotic stuff is, it makes it really challenging. That same thing with cardiac arrest. For us, if they're in cardiac arrest, even with a fentanyl overdose, they're marking it as cardiac arrest, and I don't even see fentanyl. So unless I do a chart review and read each narrative to come out and pick those ones out, it's really hard to collect that data. And that's where we rely on our corners to be able to show us those. And then at the bottom is our Narcan administration rate. Some people get 2 doses, so some people require multiple doses depending on how much they've taken or how long they've had in between doses. So a little bit on data. I know you guys probably aren't super excited about that. Okay, so our Narcan Leave Behind program. Well, we require crews if they do what we call a Narcan wake up. But if you show up on somebody that's overdosed, we give Narcan and they're adamant they're not going to the hospital, and we are going to sign a refusal and they're staying in whatever location they are. The 2 things we try to make sure is they have somebody there to watch them, so if there's a problem, they can call 911 back. And the second thing we do is we leave one of these kits. And the overdose kit has the Narcan in it, along with a pamphlet and some other stuff to get these people out. That is what actually makes our program different than any of the others in the state. The rest of them are leaving Narcan, they're not leaving the pamphlet. So during our time of trying to get some funding, because the health and welfare had shut funding down for Narcan, so I was in a process of trying to get some funding to get our program up and running. I was introduced to Jacob over here, who you're going to meet in a second. And Jacob's a peer support specialist, and he said, hey, we could actually do something better than just leave Narcan. We can actually start helping people. And so that is when our crews, who have contact with these people, are able to leave this kit. We've offered that you can leave a kit if you're there changing smoke detectors and you see some drug paraphernalia. Maybe you leave one of these pamphlets behind. Or if you're there for a lift assist and you notice there might be a problem, right? Or we're there for something else, we can still leave it. It doesn't have to be an overdose. We let our guys kind of have the freedom to be able to do that. And with that, since this program started a little over 2 years ago, we've helped 370 people. And I know Jacob's gonna I'm probably stealing some of his numbers here. But we've helped 370 people, with 208 of them being 30 days clean. We have 106 people at 60 days. We have 95 people at 90 days. And we have 67 that are at or over 180 days clean. And those are, that's Jacob. Because that's some huge numbers that we're able to put down and actually show that we're making a difference in our community. Basically, the only thing I did, and our department is really good at thinking out of the box and trying stuff that a lot of departments won't go to, we said yes. We were like, this sounds crazy, I'm not sure this is gonna work, but let's try it. It can't hurt, we're not doing anything as it is, so let's at least try to help. And with that, once we got Jacob up and running, this program's been pretty amazing, so. That's pretty much where we're at, so. We are, most of this is funded through CDC grant. It's funded through St. Luke's Hospitals helping us, and Southwest District Health gives us some money to help out to offset some of the costs for printing. We're health and welfare through harm reductions got the Narcan back up. So as you guys know, you're able to get that. We're able to get it free now and be able to hand it out to our community. Some of the funds are used to maintain Jacob, who answers his phone 24/7 when people call, and it's pretty crazy. So with that, I'm going to hand off. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And they've been doing a wonderful job, and I've gotten to see it from the start, and it's just unbelievable how much they're helping. And so, Jacob, I think Tom did a great job introducing you, but he's the founder and CEO of Hope Guides. He's the owner of Hope House Structured Living, and he's the co-founder and president of Project Hope Helps, as well as a peer recovery coach and a certified drug and alcohol counselor. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Hopefully, okay, I'm gonna take everybody else's cue and step in front. So, this is the Napa Narcan initiative. So it originally started in Napa, but it's since grown and proliferated out quite considerably. We still name it the initiative because we want to pay homage to where it started. This is me with glasses and a suit jacket. So a couple of cool things about me that I think are important to kind of set the tone is that one, I have lived experience, and I don't think that, like, when people think addiction, at least whatever I did whenever I was using, I always thought about the person who's crawling out from underneath the bridge with nothing but a backpack. And I was like, oh, I'm in law school, doing National Law United Nations, I'm just using here and there. Well, soon enough, even though I was doing all these things, I wound up getting addicted to opiates during a National Model United Nations trip, which is like a huge organization. It takes people from all over the world. You come together and you simulate the UN. I got hooked on opiates over the course of about 3 days. While I was in law school, I wound up using about 30 pills a day. So for those of you all that know, nowadays, that's about 15 chances to die a day. Back then, I was fortunate enough that where I went to school was right outside of Mylan Pharmaceuticals. So you know the big M that's on all the Fentanyl pills, that's for Mylan Pharmaceuticals. That's in Morgantown, West Virginia. So, I mean, call it fortunate or unfortunate, but that's what my path was. Since then, I've worked in the recovery industry for nearly a decade. I've done over 1,000 successful crisis interventions, helped over 2,000 people. I've worked with veterans, US SOCOM, which is like tier 1 operators, universities and cities to develop strategies. Why am I doing this in Napa? Largely because I have, God willing, 3 little girls that are going to be coming here. 2, 1 that's 6 and 1 that's 3. And eventually they're going to be dating and living in this community. And I want to know I've done absolutely everything I can do to make it a better place. Let's see. Okay, so, let's see, I'm getting too excited. Okay. So why do I do what I do? A number of reasons. One, somebody wants access to treatment. If you pull out your phone right now and you Google search treatment, the very first thing that's going to pop up is about 3 pages worth of ads. Right? And when you call up that cell phone number and you say, hey, yeah, I'm trying to get into treatment, they're like, great, $30,000. Or, hey, cool, what kind of insurance do you have? Or, oh, yeah, we can do that, we're in Arizona. Whatever number of excuses that you want to throw out there, it's ads, right? And so for me, whenever I was going through it, I was super fortunate that, like, I had governmental insurance. My mom worked in the Fed. So, like, when we got the call center that said, oh, yeah, we're out in Memphis, Tennessee, we're calling from West Virginia, we're going to go there, whatever. So we went. Nowadays, if somebody were to call and look at that, I mean, there's ECRA, which I'm sure you're familiar with ECRA, which is like the anti-kickback laws. Like, there's all kinds of legislation that's taking place that's going against that. And so where my heart is that I want to make sure that any treatment plan that we're giving to somebody is, one, it's economic, right? I mean, it's not going to, like, make a parent have to remortgage their home. I use that as an example all the time, but me personally know somebody where that's literally their situation right now. Like in order to get their kid the treatment that they believe that they need, they're taking out a second mortgage on their house. I want to avoid those situations. Why else is, I think that there's the wait list at times, like somebody calls in and they hear 30 days, or they call 3 centers and they hear no, for that small fraction of time that somebody's willing, that could be lethal, right? And so it could cost us all a lot of money by incarcerating them. So I mean, we wind up incarcerating somebody with a simple misdemeanor charge, we wind up getting in further trouble because of that wait list. I think that's avoidable, right? And I think if somebody had somebody that was guiding them through that process, we can avoid those things. One of the biggest reasons why I do what I do, again, I just kind of touched on it, is that like my parents had 2 drug-addicted children. So like, it was myself and then my younger sister. I was fortunate enough to get on my 2nd shot. My sister spent 8 years trying to get 1 year clean. Like God willing now, it seems like she's over top of the hump. But they drained everything that they could into resources that ultimately, like, eventually they wanted to follow the procedures that we're going to talk about and wanted to get some success. So our program has multiple entry points. We started originally with fire and EMS. We then started noticing that a lot of people we were working with were having prior law enforcement engagement. So let's talk to the police. Then we got Denver Police on board. Then Caldwell Police got on board. Then we got other counties on board with their EMS, and then eventually the emergency departments. So there's multiple entry points where somebody could have an interaction with EMS, then they go to the emergency room, they're hearing the same information, and it's all pointing them back towards the same entry point. So a typical treatment process for somebody, you were talking about this with the 30-day titration off of somebody's tolerance. Most people look at treatment, they think it's phase 1, right, which is stabilization 30 days. The reality is that, like, if you really want to have success with people, the true success markers are between phase 2 and phase 3, right? So that 6 months to a year is really what somebody needs underneath their belt to really gain enough traction to build a life that they don't want to throw away, right? Because it's not enough just to get them off the drugs, right? They have to build up something that they don't want to do, that they don't want to throw away for. So we can come in at any one of these points, and we have, which is what's led to those bigger numbers, is that people will say, oh, I know who you need to talk to in order to find a good house. You need to talk to Jake. You need to talk to Project Hope Help. So we come in at any stage during this process. A vast majority of the people that we work with, we're doing this first part, helping them find treatment options. And so again, like if I have somebody who is experiencing DV, I'm not going to go put them into a co-ed facility, right? Maybe the better thing for them to be in is a closed, smaller group where they can learn how to open up. Not everybody necessarily has the ability to go into a 30-day inpatient. Some people need something that can meet them where they are, right? It can meet people at different positions, be able to help walk them through the recovery process at a different stage. So we try to create custom treatment plans that walk people through that process, that be able to build a life that they're, again, not going to throw away. So, I mean, you guys probably all know what this is, but basically it's personalized guidance, it's trusted companion. So they're working with a probation officer. I can't tell you the number of times that I've gotten connected to somebody where they're like, oh yeah, I think that there's something wrong, and somebody has probation for something else. And I'm like, well, why don't you just go tell them what's going on so we can get you approved for treatment? Oh no, I can't tell my probation officer. There's like huge stigmas against them opening up and working along the lines of support that they have. So my goal is to be that trusted companion where like I can gather the information, relay what's necessary, and get somebody into treatment. So we have one particular individual, because I'm not going to go through all the slides. We have one guy that I originally got connected to on suicidality. Basically, he was a suicide risk. Turns out that the guy was 17 dating a 16-year-old. He turned 18, she turned 17. Dad didn't like him because he was a musician. They broke up, of course, right? And Dad pressed charges against the kid for basically. Long story short, he just signed the thing to his parents saying get involved, and he basically is a registered sex offender. Even though like he just like signed it to get rid of it. Didn't think it through, didn't do any of that stuff. Broke up with a girlfriend. The lease ran out on the apartment. He had to find a space where he was going to go. His family lives in North Carolina, and the guy's like, well, I'm just going to use fentanyl until like it takes me. That was his plan. Now again, suicide threats didn't communicate the plan. Just parents were worried about him. And so we wind up working alongside them, and it's like, you got to tell your probation officer what's going on so we can get you approved for treatment. It's like, no, I can't do that. If I do that, they're going to send me to jail. I promise you, the goal of the probation officer is actually to keep you out of it, not to send you to it. So anyways, we worked alongside them and wound up being able to get an interstate compact set up. He eventually admitted got an interstate compact, got him out to North Carolina where his family is. That guy's a year and a half clean today. Right? And so I tell you that story just so that you know, right, that it doesn't always look like this perfect sequence of events. And on top of that, the collaboration that we're able to do to get somebody where they need to be, right? Him getting sober out here and being stuck out here where, I mean, again, like in North Carolina, there's grades and there's variants to that charge, right? So he can rent an apartment. Can't do that here, right? It's very difficult to, let me rephrase, it's very difficult to here, right? Out there, his family supports out there, there's different variants to it because she was willing and she was within a year, like he doesn't even have to register out there. So basically what we do is that I have a for-profit company called Hope Guides. We took that and made it available for free. That's the summation of what we do. And it takes people from pre-intervention to intervention, detox residential, long-term, step-down care, and post-treatment. This is really where our bread and butter is. I wish we had a little laser. It's the 6 month, it's that post-treatment piece, right? Like we really make sure that we focus on helping people build lives, right? That's beyond just like staying off of drugs and alcohol. It's things like getting them into amazing careers, right? Or at least helping them, what do you want to do for a career? Get them into school, have them building out goals for themselves so then they can see the success and the change in themselves. So these are statistics, we don't need to go over these, everybody knows, but basically 5.35 serious attempts for recovery, that's the national average. What we just went over again is that if somebody goes to treatment for 30 days, their tolerance is lower, they're not going to get 5 chances. Like you're not going to get 5 opportunities to go through treatment. So this is some of the numbers we were talking about. These are old, so Tom has the updated number from last month. So we're going to skip through these. But what I will say is that some interesting stats are 68% of the people that we engage with had prior law enforcement engagement. 45% of those people were on probation or parole. Now we have 72% of those people that were in violation status. Like, so basically like, hey, you screw up, you're going. Or I haven't been able to get a hold of you for 2 weeks, what's going on? 72% of those people are now in good standing. So that in and of itself, if we know how much it costs us in the state of Idaho, it's basically 60 grand plus to have somebody in jail for a year, right? Like we saved a bunch of money, so that's a good thing, and on a nominal grant. A really sad statistic is that 13% of the people that we're working with are age 17. The youngest person that I've been engaged with through this program as of right now is a 12-year-old kid. Whoa. Girl, which is also alarming. And the story, without giving too many details, basically she wound up in Florida. She was hitchhiking with truckers. And wound up in Florida, and that's where the parents wound up finding her. And if you ever try to get a kid, a girl, right, so a young woman, into an adolescent treatment center in Idaho on Medicaid, right, like, it is very difficult. So like having the family understanding that we can apply for grants, there's all kinds of things that we can do to help make access for treatment. I believe in my heart that we probably put that going a different path, hopefully. We have plenty of stories here, but there's a handful of ones that I want to go over just so that you all know. Here's an interesting one. So a person, I tell the story, Tom remembers the story. Remember the summer when it was really hot in that office? It was like 113 degrees or something. It was crazy. It was like a year and a half ago. So this guy was driving around in a boat, and he basically somebody starts seeing him throwing his kids overboard without life vests, right? And they call in. And so he comes in and he starts telling people, like I remember reading it in the police report, I'm King Kong mother effer. And I was like, oh my gosh. So he of course gets taken for a psych eval. And I get connected from the charge nurse through the psych eval, and I'm like, did you guys test to make sure that like, he wasn't on anything? They're like, oh yeah, it's all clean. And I was like, okay, this is 2 days after we've been in there. I was like, did you test for anything other than like the standard template stuff? And they're like, no. We just know that he's not using these things. He's like, well, what about test chemicals? Like, no, we didn't test for any of that. So I get connected to the family, and I'm like, look, I was like, based on everything that I'm hearing, I was like, based on what it looks like, I was like, again, this is a yes, but it sounds like he's in DTs, like alcohol withdrawals. And that the heat and the fact that he was out there for basically a day, like this antagonized it, sped it up for him. And look, if it is the case, it would be very wise of him to say that like that's the case. He's 45 years old, right? The likelihood that he had a psychotic break at 45 is like extremely unlikely, and if that's the story that he's gonna go with, good luck getting custody of the kids back, right? It's gonna be a very long drawn out process. So we got him into a treatment center, and he was still fighting it the whole way, but long story short is that basically by working through that treatment center and going through that therapeutic process, he eventually wound up admitting to it. They're like, yeah, I was using kava, which is a drink that people use to try to help them ease off of alcohol withdrawals. So it's supposed to simulate the effects of like of a benzodiazepine. And so long story short is that he wound up admitting to it on going through the process, which is much shorter whenever you admit to CPS. I have a substance abuse issue. He basically wound up going through that process, and now again he doesn't have back his full parental rights, right? But they're not like worried that he's gonna have another psychotic break and start throwing people overboard. So with that being said, the real like true heart of a lot of what it is that I think this is important for are the innocent people. So this is a common picture that's thrown around, which is that you can see the kids awake, the parents are nodded out. These are local stories all across the U.S. So this is at OHSU, which is in Oregon. 449% increase in potentially deadly drugs among children. So like now there's a thing called opioid poisoning. It's a whole new classification of that. Where it's basically, I mean, you know this, right? And so it's where the kids are exposed to stuff and they're not the intended users. There's another one where a daycare operator sentenced to 45 years in prison with connection with fentanyl poisoning of 4 children at a Bronx daycare. I mean, like, think about that, that's crazy. This one right here is like really sad. When a 1-year-old little boy in New York City died because it was hidden underneath his mat, so it absorbed through the mat, right? And so like you think that these things aren't happening here, but they are. Like I just met with CPS this morning. We were talking about a little girl who was going through trying to clean up after her mom and was exposed to fentanyl. And like when you read these stories and you see how easy it is for something to happen, it's like those are the things we're trying to prevent against. And we know that, like, again, getting people healthy means the families becoming whole again, right? We're stopping generational issues. So yes, it looks like it's one-part intervention, but the reality is that it's also prevention. Because these kids, if they do survive through this, the likelihood that they're going to wind up following inside the parents' footsteps is extremely high. But if the parents can show that like this is the way we navigate through this, and they also show life recovery, it also mitigates those risks too. So that's my big long spiel about like let me help people.
That was awesome, thank you. So I just lost you. Okay, perfect, and then I'm gonna hand this to you, Joan. Our last panelist of the evening is Amber LaRocco, who is a dear friend of mine. That's not me. No. There we go. So Amber has worked in behavioral health since 2006 in Idaho, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Wyoming. She's a harm reduction program and grant manager at Tribune Life Services, and Amber is also a certified drug and alcohol counselor.
Amber doesn't have a slideshow because the clicker scares me. It makes me anxious. I'm glad you guys are all here. I think this is just one of those topics that we hear about in our community, and we're like, yeah, that is really, really bad, but we don't struggle with it. And so that's for the people that need it to go and learn about it. And the reality of it is, through all the stories we've heard tonight, is that not just opioid use disorder, right? But substance use disorder as a whole impacts almost everything, right? It's everybody's issue, it's everybody's concern, it's everybody's problem. And if you haven't been impacted by it yet, I would say yeah, because I have a sponsor, she told me that stands for you're eligible too, right? So just wait, it might happen. A little backstory, I'm also in long-term recovery. I was an IV drug user for methamphetamine from the age of 15 to 25. I am a proud product of the Ada County Drug Court. Some great intervention there. I went through multiple treatment centers, multiple detoxes. I did really, really well in treatment. I did really, really well in detox. And I'd get out, and I'd get the husband back, and the car back, and the kids back, the bank account back, and I didn't have to do anything else. And I could easily give it all away. And so drug court was my saving grace. I think when I say that, people say, well, that makes sense why you're a harm reduction advocate. And I would say, no, you can see how you got there. But I was raised in this very abstinence-based, rigorous environment of recovery. Like drug court, they are not lenient, right? It is no. In 2021, I lost my niece. She was 22 years old, was a recreational, casual drug user, bought some pills at a bar in Idaho Falls, went home and used them, went to the hospital, got pulled out of her overdose, went home and finished her pills, and passed away. This is a girl that none of us suspected was using drugs, right? Like maybe alcohol, maybe pot, but nothing like that. That was, at that moment, the worst experience of my life. I was like, that is so painful, watching my sister and her dad sob over her at the funeral. That was May 3rd, 2021. May 17th, 2022, my youngest brother overdosed and died from fentanyl overdose. He bought some pills, he'd been abstinent for a minute. My brother was a product of somebody in and out of prisons, in and out of mental health institutes. He'd get out, he'd get well, he'd do really, really well. He got to get a dad. He's a wonderful human who had some significant struggles with substance use and mental health. He was abstinent for a minute, and my brother had Narcan. My brother had Narcan in the car, my brother had Narcan in his bathroom, he had it on the kitchen sink, he had it on the floor, he had Narcan everywhere. He didn't know how to be well, he didn't want to die. And the day that my brother overdosed, there was no Narcan in the house. The officer responding, this was back in 2022, didn't have Narcan on him, he had to call for it to be brought in. And then, once the trauma settled, once we kind of gathered ourselves back up, it's been a really rough few years for our family. We had this real fledgling, just not growing harm reduction program at my work. So I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, I work at Trivial Life Services. And during the pandemic, at the beginning of it, we were looking towards instituting an OTP, which is an opioid treatment program, to bring methadone in as one of our tools for opioid use disorder. And we pivoted at that point. We said, you know what? Because that year we lost more clients than we had the previous 5 years combined. And so we pivoted and we said, what about harm reduction? And our board of directors said, but you're a treatment center. That doesn't work well. We said, but what we're finding is that people are dying. And if they're dying, they don't have the opportunity to come in and get well. And so we brought on harm reduction, and it started out as brick and mortar in our office with a vending machine. So if you come into our office like a vending machine, I'm sure there's one here in the school maybe, instead of a Kit Kat and a granola bar or soda, you can get Narcan, you can get fentanyl test strips, you can get xylazine test strips, you can get pregnancy tests, you can get condoms, you can get all sorts of stuff. And it's free to anybody in the community, not just our clients. So that took some real education and talking and trust building with our clients. Like, yes, you're here and your probation officer reported you, and yes, we understand you have a drug problem, and yes, we want you to get well. And if you're struggling, here are some resources. If you don't feel like you can talk to us, if you're not ready to be honest, because that fear of going back to prison or going to prison for the first time is so real, at least keep yourself safe. So we go in and we talk to probation and parole. If you want to talk about putting yourself up on a bonfire, go into probation and parole and tell them you're moving from regular drug and alcohol treatment to incorporating harm reduction. And at that time, syringe exchange was still legal in Idaho. And it's a bit syringes now, it's a vending machine. It took a lot of public education, a lot of hearing about concerns, a lot of telling stories and presenting data. And I would say that we don't have everyone convinced, and that's okay, right? And we're winning some people over to our side, because what we're seeing now as a whole is overdoses are dropping, right? And is that because of I don't know if we can pinpoint it. I would like to say it's because of the flood of Narcan after our community, because people like you are coming to these events and getting educated and sharing this education with people you love and care about, right? And so just like that ripple effect, it's spreading. But going back to my brother, back in 2022, he could have came to a harm reduction agency and got syringes. And at that point, we would have said, all right, great, friend, you have Narcan. Who's going to know where Narcan is? Who's going to know where it's at? If you have the Never Refuse Alone hotline, there's this 1-800 number you can call and say, hey, I'm getting ready to use fentanyl. They say, great. Can you tell us what your name is and what your location is? And if you give them that information, then they just sit with you while you use your substances. And they ask you questions. Do you have a dog? Do you like cats? What's your favorite color? And if you become unresponsive, they send EMS. Right? So there's some safety barriers or safety that we put in place for people brother went to a pharmacy, and he purchased his syringes there, and he went home and he died in his bathroom. And that was it for me, right? That was it. That's where many years of being like, treatment is best, abstinence is best, recovery, there's a way, shifting to, there's gotta be something different. Right? And how do we support people so that another family doesn't have to go through this? And so, that's how I got to where I'm at now. So our outreach program, we do this every week down in, we operate in Boise. We've tried to operate over here in Canyon County. Unhoused population primarily gets shifted over to Boise, right, where there's resources at. So if you're here and you know a good place for us to do outreach, I would love to hear about it. We operate out of our Caldwell office sometimes. We serve our clients there. I would really love to get out to the community here. So we go down to the court, that's the unhoused, right? The Corpus Christi is right there, Interfaith Sanctuary, River flies around the corner, and we set up and we work out of my truck. I've got Narcan on my license plate, so I'm a Narcan lady down there. And spring, winter, summer, fall, we're operating out of the back of my truck at a totes, and we take supplies down there. Today, given the laws and funding, our supplies look like our Narcan. We have nasal Narcan, we have intramuscular Narcan. Intramuscular Narcan is more of our old school people who like to use. We talk about that titration because they don't want to go into full withdrawal because they know what that's like. We have fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips. We've got pregnancy tests, wound care kits, hygiene kits, backpacks. On a good day, we have food and water. But also who comes down there with me is a recovery coach, a clinical therapist, and then we also bring in intake staff. And that way, while we're talking with people, if somebody says, hey, you know what, I'm really interested in treatment, our recovery coach can come in and talk and be like, all right, what's the best fit? Like, tell me a little bit about your story. What are your recovery goals? Because in this realm of harm reduction, it's a continuum. Some people want to just stop smoking fentanyl, right? Some people want to just stop smoking meth. They're feeling okay about continuing on with marijuana, and that's all right, that's their journey, right? And so we just gauge where they're at. Are you interested in residential? Do you want spiritual dates? Do you want 12-step units? What do you need? And then we can connect them to that. If they decide they want to sign up for an assessment and come to our office, then my intake coordinator can get our paperwork filled out there. And then we get them scheduled for an assessment, and our recovery coach goes down and picks them up. I would say I had high hopes that we were going to go down there, and people were just going to be like, yes, I am ready. I want this. So I want that for them. Because we get this big picture about what maybe life can be like outside of substance use, right? But then we start to realize that the barriers that they face down there aren't just silent, it's not just substance use. They've got trauma. They've got housing insecurity. They're on felony probation, so they can't get a job that can pay the rent. Even if they can pay rent, there's not rent available that they can afford. And so for a lot of our people, they say, you know what, I've got this place I'm staying at. But they also use drugs there, and if I go to treatment, I'm not going to be successful because I have to go back to this house because it's the only place I have. And they're still using. I don't know how I can recover in that environment. And so then we start to broaden our scope on what harm reduction looks like. And we don't go down there with an agenda. We go down there just to serve people, make connections. So what we know about harm reduction is if somebody engages in harm reduction services, and they're getting supplies or whatever it is they're getting from us, they're 5 times more likely to enter into treatment on their own, meaning without the courts telling them, the probation officer telling them, the angry wife or husband telling them, CPS telling them, they're 5 times more likely to do it on their own volition than someone who doesn't. Right, so that's a really good motivating factor for us. So our job down there is just to build a rapport, to treat people the same way we want everybody to be treated, right? To see them as human and not as this moral dilemma where they've chosen this life of drug use, substance use, homelessness, whatever it is, and start to see like what are the systemic issues that have brought them to this place that now they can't overcome because there's such limited resources. Funding is constantly getting cut, right? Housing is an issue. Residential treatment is an issue. Insurance. Giving somebody the application for Medicaid, maybe you can't read, and say, you can't just go ahead and fill this out and let us know when you have it. And they kind of step back and I'm like, man, I can't. So that's where we come in and we say, hey, let us help walk you through that. Probably all the stuff that you do, right? Just kind of go up alongside them. I would say some of the stories we have from down there that validates the work that we do. last winter, we were down there handing out clothing, and this gentleman comes up and he's talking, he's like, I have no idea how I got here. I'm like, well, tell me more, buddy, what are you talking about? He said, I had 6 years of recovery, we were living down south in Arkansas, someplace, and he said, it was me, my wife, and my kid. Me and my wife had gotten off of drugs, we were living well. I was on probation, so I couldn't get a good enough job, I couldn't afford to move us out of the trailer park, and we were stuck. And his wife got shot and killed in that trailer park. And then he returned to drug use, and he's like, I don't understand how I got back to drug use. And so we talked to him, right? And I bet that was the most heart-wrenching, guilt-ridden, most powerless you felt in your entire life, because I absolutely see test for a kid. They said the environment wasn't safe, and now I'm here. And we got to talk to him about like maybe the circumstances that you experienced without the proper supports in place made your life so painful that subconsciously that addiction, right, our addicted mind reminds us all the time, I know a different way. I know how to solve that for you. I know how to make you not hurt. I'd love to say he signed up for treatment, right? And that things are different, but I can tell you he still shows up and he's got a job now. He still shows up and looks a little bit weller now. And recovery isn't linear, right? It took me 10 years to get to where I was at when I was like, okay, I'm ready. I was ready because I didn't want to go to prison. That was my fundamental readiness. It took a minute. It took a minute for me to get real, like, eternally ready. But as we ask people to walk through these doors of recovery or treatment, or through the doors of a 12-step meeting, or through the doors of whatever service that they're seeking, and we expect for the switch to be flipped, and that they're just going to stop using. And that's just not the way it is. That's like a drop in the bucket, a very good, important, strong drop in the bucket. But it's going to take time. And so how do we support these guys and gals so that they can still be around, alive, safe, and healthy to take advantage of what the services are receiving? You know, and that's what harm reduction is. It's just all about making connections and just really seeing people for who they are. Our office operates a lot of different other grants. We've got Barney boxes or Narcan distribution boxes that we place throughout the Treasure Valley. At Narcan, we've got one out in Mountain Home I'm super proud of because that's super resource bearing. People can walk into LA out there and get test strips, Narcan, condoms, a lot of different things. So we've got a grant for that. We've got a grant similar to what Jacob does, but we operate out of the hospitals in Boise. So if somebody goes into the ED and they're there, we're trying to reduce the number of ED visits based on behavioral health needs. And so if they go into the ER and they get admitted to a floor, the social workers will talk to them and be like, hey, we've got this program, and someone can talk to you. And they can connect you to services. And we connect them to any service that they want in Boise. We do not have a monopoly of that. So if they don't choose for them, it's fantastic. And then we call them, we follow up, and we check in with them. We go through life with them for up to a year, free of charge. And that program is amazing. It's, there's a couple of different ones throughout the state of Idaho, and some operate differently. I don't know. My heart's just full that you guys are all here, and I hope if you're here because you've got something you're concerned about, you're providing some information that's valuable to you. I hope if you're here and you ever need this information for yourself, you know that you've seen a couple of different agencies come here that understand. We've got North Point here. You've got AA here. I'm going to forget some. We've got the Recovery Center out in Caldwell here, which is a huge, huge deal to have that kind of community here. So take the information and share it with people you love. That's all I have.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's hear it again. Another round of applause for our next, we're going to move into question and answer session. I do have, maybe, thinking about it. Yeah, it works. Maybe not. No, this is anyhow. So if you feel like it, if you would like to ask the panelists a question, you can either use your phone to scan that QR code, or you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code. And I didn't even think about how I'm going to be able to look at the questions because my other slide did not work. Let me see if I can go back on the slide. might work. So we'll see. Same thing, the code is up top, or you can scan the QR code, and potentially, possibly, your questions may come up on the screen. But in the interim, there's microphones at both tables, and so I just have a couple, and actually, snap those, yeah. I actually have some questions that I wanted to ask our panelists. And so I'm just gonna start with the Office of the Coroner, Takasha. What are the challenges in identifying fentanyl toxicity in postmortem examinations? Like how do you know that? How do you figure that out?
Okay, good, it's on. Okay, so like I was saying, the delay in the autopsy reports, that's what really makes it hard to identify, like, these are officially overdose cases. So the scene exam, the history, and then the autopsy correlation all have to play together to really prove that there's an overdose. So, for instance, a lot of people have health conditions, terminal chronic health conditions, but they do use drugs. Okay, so we went to a house and we had an elderly gentleman. He was tucked into his bed. It looks like he passed away in his sleep. His neck's tucked in his covers, no foul play noted. But over on his nightstand, you see foil, you see a tutor, you see a torch, and some blue substance. Okay, you're gonna assume like, okay, this is likely an overdose. But then you start doing the exam, you start noticing like there's some pitting edema. You take him back for an autopsy because you have a substance present on the scene. Everyone there is already assuming like this is likely an overdose. We have substance that's likely fentanyl. During the autopsy, we see dilated cardiomyopathy. So the heart itself is enlarged. There's significant fluid in the lungs. Typically, it takes days to weeks for that to fill up, sometimes even years. And then there's fluid buildup in the stomach. Again, we see this a lot with meth users. That's a chronic, long-term side effect of using meth. Their heart will stop functioning over a long period of time because they have high blood pressure. And then the tox comes back, and that fentanyl or that methamphetamine level was a therapeutic level. It was not in a fatal or toxic range. So the death is actually natural. So this is where there's kind of a misinterpretation. We have other people on scene investigating it, and they're going to assume immediately, like, oh, we had an overdose at this house. Or it's documented inappropriately, but we really need to go through the entire process to match up every part of the scene to make sure that person's death is, they're getting the dignity of why they truly died. The families get the correct answers, and we get our job all the way across.
Thank you. Yeah, that is definitely challenging. Tom, Chief Wright, what are some of the biggest challenges EMS faces when responding to fentanyl-related emergencies?
Not being prepared. No, that is me right now. So the biggest thing we're facing, I think, there's a side effect of this. Our crews are very prepared to handle overdoses. Our crews are ready to manage the patients. One of the things that we have identified is the stress and the toll that takes on our people. I kind of mentioned it where we tend to be most of our overdoses, we do have some older people, but a lot of them tend to be a little younger. And so it really kind of hits home. And it's frustrating when they go out and continually have to either manage that same person over again multiple times and watch their demise, which we've had several, or kind of like the other day, a couple weeks ago, we kind of don't know on which week it was. Well, we had a female that was that died on the scene, and two males that were overdosed in an apartment. We had some bad mixed drugs that kind of came through. We had a rash of overdoses for about a week or so until our law enforcement partners were able to clean some of that up along with the drugs getting used up. And that takes an emotional toll on our crews and our guys, even if we don't outwardly show it all the time, but it does add up, and it kind of hurts them. And it's tough for a long career as they're faced with seeing that all the time. So the more we can do to help them stop that, or at least the hope that we're giving them with our program is giving our guys a new light and gives them hey, maybe there is a chance for some of these people, and you kind of stay in a little bit better mental tone. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Even if it isn't the drug itself, it's the toll it
Is there anything, I'm just gonna ask you one more question to follow up. Is there anything that the public can do to be better prepared to assist EMS in the overdose situations?
For the overdose, I think the biggest thing is having Narcan available, understanding how to use it. Melanie, that's an awesome class, you guys should take it. Administering Narcan, and having it available, because that is huge when you can make that much of a difference. We talk in cardiac arrest, if somebody's heart stops, and because of a heart attack, right, every minute that we don't get their heart beating again is a 10% drop in the chance of them surviving long term. That same thing is happening with somebody that isn't breathing from an overdose. So for every minute we go, the chance of us getting them back is less and less. Our average response time is about 5 to 7 minutes to most of our calls. So you think about that, brain death starts in 6. So with a person that wasn't already hypoxic, meaning they're low oxygen levels, right? So if they're already obtunded because of alcohol and fentanyl and they're not really breathing well, that time goes even less. And so the importance of you guys being able to intervene, and even do something as simple as just squirting that Narcan in their nose can make a difference in their survival.
Thank you. I'm gonna go over this way. Amber, you kind of touched on the vending machine that you have, but do you want to maybe talk about additional locations and places people can access that naloxone and Narcan?
Very cool. So in Candy County, I'm gonna say I'm not really familiar with where those are gonna be, and so maybe that's something you could talk about with the Barney boxes. We call them Barney boxes because they're purple. I thought that was a ubiquitous term across the country for Narcan distribution boxes. It's Idaho. People look at me like I'm crazy when I say we have a Barney box. They're like, that's the safety. So in Boise and CDH, Central District Health also has a map. So if you're looking at District 4, that's going to be Valley, Ada, Elmore, and Boise County of where these Narcan distribution boxes are. I will say Narcan is not in a Barney box, but at Trimming Life Services in Caldwell off Dearborn, we have all of those supplies that I mentioned earlier available to anybody in the community. So if you or somebody you know needs supplies, if you want to arm yourself with supplies, you can go to Tribune and get those. But in Boise, we've got boxes at Elada down in Garden City. We've got boxes down in Behavioral Health Group off Cole, which is a methadone and Suboxone clinic. We've got one in their Meridian location off Eagle. We've got one at Pure Wellness, which is the counterpart to the Recovery Center here in Caldwell off of Emerald. And we also have one at the Hive, and I wasn't really familiar with what the Hive is. The Hive is a pretty cool place to support the people that we kind of serve with music and creativity, and they've got a box there. Our vending machine in Boise is available during business hours. People just have to go and say, walk up to reception and say, I have an appointment with vending. That's what we call it, is vending. And when you come in and you ask for that, you meet with the recovery coach, a case manager, and myself, and we do a quick screening for additional needs. We get you a PIN number, and once you have that PIN number, you're able to come in and access that machine anytime during business hours without an appointment. We also have a floating closet in there and some additional resources. I think Behavioral Health Group also in Boise has a vending machine.
Awesome, thank you so much. Narcan is also available over the counter. It does have a price point of $45, but all the local public health departments offer it for free, as well as we have a pop-up at the Southwest Idaho Recovery Community Center. So there are definitely a lot of locations, and we're working to get a map on our Southwest District Health website as well that has free Narcan locations. But you can get a prescription from any prescriber that can write a prescription as well. And if you have Medicaid, it's completely free to get Narcan from a pharmacy. Thank you so much. And then we're almost at time, but I did want to ask, Jake, you talked about your family living here in Nampa. How can communities support individuals recovering from substance use disorder or fentanyl dependence?
So So I think that the number one thing that anybody that's in recovery will tell you is that it takes the community. Like, at least from my personal experience, is that I don't know anybody who's ever said, yeah, I did it all by myself, just me. I know that it takes community, not just in the form of like mentorship, it takes community in terms of like, you know, family getting educated, understanding what that looks like. You can't treat, and I'm just gonna say, little Johnny, can't treat little Johnny like he's little Johnny on the trike. You can't treat little Johnny like he's little Johnny who's just caught smoking fentanyl in the bathroom either. You gotta treat him like he's little Johnny that's early in recovery, and that's very different from what it looked like, you know, prior to him entering into treatment or trying to find recovery. Spouses getting educated in what it looks like, understanding the differences between you know, healthy boundaries and enabling and things along those lines. I really do think that the more that we educate ourselves in terms of how do we support one another in recovery, that's where you're gonna find the needle movers. And I say this all the time, Tom's heard me say this a bajillion times. The way that we're gonna help each other as a community is we need to get more people in recovery. Because people that are in recovery find solutions to help people in recovery. And so if everybody today who's struggling or who you connected with, they're like, I want to get sober now, we don't have the infrastructure to support it. Like, we don't. And the only way that that changes is by getting more people into recovery, because they will eventually find solutions to help other people. It's part of what it is that we do. Like, the way we keep it is by giving back. And so I do think that the way that the community arms themselves is by having those difficult conversations. I was working with somebody earlier today, and one of the questions I asked, just telling Amber, one of the questions I asked was, well, did they drug test? Like, they're noticing all these behaviors, did they drug test? Because it's better to know what you're dealing with than to guess or try to pontificate what's happening. And so I think the more education, having those difficult conversations and creating the community is what's gonna help our community.
I love that, thank you so much. Okay, as we're almost out of time, I just wanted to go to each panelist and just ask one last imparting thought for the audience. What's one thing, a strategy, a solution, something that you're doing that is helping the overdose crisis? And is there anything that the concerned citizens who want to help fight the crisis can do when it comes to your organization?
One of the things that the HIDE is involved in, we've got essentially three parts of our HIDE, which is obviously to go after mid to upper level drug traffickers, dismantle or disrupt those organizations. We also have the second goal is to communicate. But the third goal that the HIDE has just recently been involved in the last couple of years is called the Overdose Response Strategy, the National Overdose Response Strategy. And within the Idaho side of the HIDE, we have what's called a public health analyst. And she and I work together to team up with, whether it's your organization, district health, throughout the entire state to try to come up with solutions on how to reduce overdose and overdose deaths in Idaho. So I think that's, it's really opened my eyes coming from, you know, the law enforcement side into this new arena, if you will, to try to work with organizations to, again, reduce overdose and overdose deaths in Idaho.
Thank you so much.
I believe a huge step that we can take is when we do these awareness programs and education seminars, is starting with the youth that is exposed to social media. I know a lot of you guys know what Reddit and TikTok is. Tons of trends on there. If you look at fentanyl and is it safe and that kind of stuff, I am telling you, there's absurd ways that they tell you it's safe and this is how you stop your overdose is by shoving like ice up your rectum or pushing you off a chair. I'm not even kidding. And we do see these on investigations, and this happens with the youth. Going out to the schools, so many children, especially around the age of 12, that's when we really start seeing it. When I go out to the schools, they tell me that they got introduced to fentanyl through like their families, from their uncle. They always thought it was safe because it was family ties. They were giving them examples of it's okay to live like this kind of thing. So spreading the awareness starting with the youth, because they are going to be the adults of tomorrow. They're going to spread the word via social media in schools. So I think getting it out there, sharing your resources, and sending them home with some information for their families too. So I think it's sort of a good place to start.
I think for my thoughts is to don't be afraid to address people or call them out and offer them to either get into one of these programs or to connect with somebody to help. There's a lot of times just somebody reaching out and saying, hey, I care and you need help, let's get you out, can mean a difference and start hopefully making an impact in our area.
Thank you so much.
So, I think that one of the things that we are actively doing is that you're seeing, if you would have had these conversations 5 years ago, there's a lot of amazing efforts that are taking place, but everything's happening siloed. And I think that what we're making an effort towards doing, at least in the Treasure Valley, from my perspective, is that there's community, like we are getting together, we are having these conversations, we are asking, how can I support you? We're sitting over here talking about shared resources. And so like, those are the things that I think that needs to happen even more so, especially as there's new players that are coming into the game, and not the game, new players that are coming into the Valley, that want to continue to add additional supports, is that we need to cross-collaborate, because again, 5.35 serious attempts, just because they started trivia doesn't mean that that's where it's going to end, just because they start with me doesn't mean that that's where it's going to end. And so the more that we can connect with one another and then show that we're unified, the easier it's going to be for the person to navigate the resources and the treasure.
So true. Thank you so much.
I think one thing that we're doing right is, like with people, I'm going to say within positions of authority, like probation and parole and court system, is kind of opening their minds to say maybe the way we've always done things isn't working. And maybe we need to look at something different. And so there's this statement that says, the opposite of addiction is connection, right? So where did that come from? And a lot of you probably know what I'm going to say, but like our theory about substance use came from this rat who was placed in a box, and there was water that was just water, and there was water that was either laced with cocaine or heroin. And what they found is when this rat in the box by itself was placed around this water, it gravitated towards the substance, right? Because life was boring, dull, and they were alone. And eventually what they would do is they'd intoxicate themselves to the point of overdose and die. Fast forward to the 1970s, and another doctor said, hey, maybe that's not the solution, maybe that's not the thing. So he created Rat Park. Rat Park had mazes, it had cheese, it had toys, it had other rats, it had girl rats, and it had boy rats. They could have unlimited sex, unlimited cheese, unlimited toys. And what they found is when people, rats, felt connected, had meaningful relationship, and had things to do that fulfilled them, they chose the regular water and not the poison water. And somehow we are similar to rats. And so when we send people off to prison, when we send people off to jail, and we divert to punishment, tough love, and seclusion to scare people into treatment, we just push them further into isolation. And so I think the one thing that we can do as a community is really work to embrace that compassion in that community and realize that Bob didn't wake up today thinking today was a great day to be strung out on opiates. Bob didn't wake up today thinking, or Sally thinking, I don't know how to get my fix, so I'm going to rob my family. There's a lot that leads up to it, and some of that we don't even see. And so having that open-mindedness to realize there's events and triggers and trauma that contribute to the way somebody is feeling and living, it's going to have an impact on their substance use. And so if we can really start to connect people, just like Jacob was saying, whether that's with treatment or 12-step or housing, whatever it is, like Tom said, be willing to say, hey man, I see a problem, how can I help? I think that's going to move the needle.
So thank you so much. All right, let's give them one hand. Thank you again to everyone who came tonight. One of the calls to action with education around Narcan is to provide Southwest District Health to provide free Narcan trainings, free Narcan, free face masks. At the Southwest District table, Southwest District Health table, there is a sign-up sheet. If you're interested in attending one of these free trainings, please leave your name and email, and I will get a hold of you, and we can figure out. I train organizations, I can train on nights, I can train on weekends, but let's get everyone training so that they know how to use Narcan. And I'm just so grateful to every panelist here. I'm very grateful. We do have a public health and safety team at Southwest District Health, and we, everyone here is on that team. And the idea is we're trying to find the gaps where people are overdosing and where they need education or help or resources. And so I'm so grateful to everyone here. Thank you so much for everything you shared. And thank you to everyone who came tonight. I appreciate you all.